Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'm excited today because I'm getting to talk with somebody who I absolutely adore. And it's none other than Dr. Melanie Joy. How are you today?
Hi. Yeah, well, with an intro like that, even better than I was before. I'm doing really well. Thank you.
Well, not quite done. You are, and if this is, correct me if I'm wrong, a Harvard educated psychologist, award winning author, and longtime advocate for justice and relational transformation. Is that true?
That is true.
Wow. Wow. That is cool. I've never met anybody that was educated. That's a big deal for me. Um, you wrote a new book, and it's probably going to look backwards in the screen, but it's called A Half-Hearted Death Wish. And it's a new book. It's fiction. You don't usually write fiction. Is that true?
Well, I mean, I wrote 7 nonfiction books, and this is my 8th book. So this is my first fiction book that I've written.
First fiction book.
Yeah.
So that's pretty intense. So you actually turned out to be really, really good at it. And I
Thank you.
enjoyed and laughed a lot through this entire book. Yeah, you have written books like Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows, Powerarchy, How to End Injustice Everywhere, one of my favorites. Um, your debut fiction, surreal, darkly funny psychological novel about a therapist confronting her own unraveling. So you did have to do some research, I guess, to get into the character a little bit. So what's inspired you to write about a successful psychologist experiencing sudden suicidal urges, and how did you approach portraying a vulnerability in someone usually seen as, a helper?
Yeah, I mean, all right. So I'll start with how I came to write the novel in the first place, like a novel in the first place. So it was, I mean, and people were very surprised because I had written not like 7 nonfiction books, and I'm known as, an academic, and I had been teaching in university for a number of years, and on and on. But at my heart, I've always been a creative. And the plan for me when I was growing up was actually, I was meant to go into the arts. I was expected by everybody in my family to go into the arts. So my mother, when she met my father, was an artist. My father was a professional musician. The areas that I excelled in school, they were all arts. I was put on the neighborhood plays for kids. I'd script them and I'd act in them. I'd direct them. And I became a musician at a very early age. And the original plan was that I would get a music scholarship and I would become a professional musician. And then that would be sort of my, entryway into college. My parents hadn't gone to college themselves. So my brother and I, who are close in age, were the first people to go to college in our immediate family. So, but anyway, I did not end up becoming an artist. I decided after trying to make money as a musician that wasn't going to happen soon enough. And so back when I was, I don't know, it was a long time ago. I was in my 20s. It's been about 30 years, I think. I just put music on the back burner and then just stopped doing it. I did eventually last year finally finish writing the album that I had been writing, so I did publish an album finally, but that was a hobby. I kind of came back to it as a hobby, but that really got me feeling like, okay, it's time to come back to my artistic roots, my creative roots. And I had always loved writing creative fiction, short stories. And I always wanted to write a novel. So I decided this was the time to do it because I had the space to do it. And I loved it. It was, and my big learning, my discovery was that this was my big aha moment. I mean, it took me, I was 57, I'm 58 now. I was 57 at the time. It took me 57 years. Well, I mean, when I started writing nonfiction, it wasn't that long ago, but it took me decades to realize that I actually don't hate writing. And that was really incredible. I just hate writing nonfiction. And I was like, I actually love writing as long as it's fiction. So this was all a big kind of like, sort of life-changing experience for me because I wrote all the nonfiction books I did because I had something important to say. I felt was important to say, and I needed to say it. And I'm a good writer. I'm a very good writer. And I knew I could do it and I should do it. But it was brutal. I mean, it was very, very, it did not come easily to me, the writing process, until I wrote fiction. And then it came easily to me, and so easily that by the time I gave myself permission to write a novel, I sat down, and it was literally the day after I had had the final conversation with somebody, because I had really been toying with this idea for a couple of years. Oh, I really want to write a novel. And after this one conversation with somebody who used to be the philanthropic advisor for one of our major donors for my organization, she's like, Melanie, there's all the reason in the world to do this. And I said, okay, I'm giving myself permission to do it. And I was at my donor's house actually at the time. I got on the plane to come home the next day. I sat down with my computer and I thought, well, what can I write about? And then the title popped into my head. It ended up not being the title. It ended up becoming the title of chapter 2, I think, The Suicidal Shrink. And then like literally 20 minutes later, I had written the whole outline. And, I just had, somehow it just came into my head like, oh, it's a story about a psychologist who's in perfect mental health, who wakes up one day and her will to live, her survival instinct, basically, her will to live has suddenly been replaced by a burning desire to die. Like, she's fine. She's not depressed. She doesn't have anxiety. Her life is fine. She just really wants to kill herself. And she knows, because she's a psychologist, that the unconscious, like your deepest desires tend to find a way, can find a way to manifest themselves. So she says to herself, I've got to figure out a way to like hack my psyche, basically, crack the code of this crazy that hit me, before it's too late, before I like step in front of a car and get killed or fall off a cliff or whatever. And therein lies and I did write about various mental health issues in it, and all of them are real. The ones that I described, like Alice in Wonderland syndrome and
Oh, really?
objectophilia, falling in love with an object. Yeah,
Is
those
that
are all
real?
They're
That
all
was the
real.
one blew my mind. I said, in love with a suitcase named Carl.
Yeah. So that's all real. That the characters aren't real, but objectophilia is real. They have like articles on it. There was a famous one where a woman fell in love with a train station. I think it was in London, and married it. So objectophilia exists. The only mental health condition that I write about in the book that isn't real, that I made up, is the condition that Emma, the main character, has. I don't want to give too much away because it's a mystery.
Sure.
But she does develop, she does discover, and this is not too much, this is not a spoiler. She does discover that she has come down with, she thought it was like some psychological flu, and she discovers it's like SOS, sudden onset suicidality, when just out of the blue, somebody is like, I have to kill myself. And that's not real. That I made up.
That shocked me, because I read it and I said, oh yeah, that's a real thing. I think I rushed to like, WebMD. I think I have that. Like, I better I'm so sick of everything. Let me see if the SOS is sudden onset suicidality. So what were you hoping to teach people with this? Trying to, what were you hoping that the readers would take away from the experience?
Well, so one thing I want to say is that, this book is like really this is not meant to make any kind of a mockery around mental health issues or suicidality. They're obviously very, very serious issues. And one of my hopes was that, people would really come away with a sense of the inherent dignity of all people. Of all individuals, I should say. Like, the people who I depict in it, they suffer from various mental health conditions that are quite bizarre a lot of the time. Emma herself is a complete hot mess, more and more so as the book goes on. And yet, one of the themes that I write about in the book is we're all doing the best we can with the cards we've been dealt. Like, there's nobody, each and every one of us, is nothing more and nothing less than the hardwiring that we were born with, and every momentary experience that we've ever had. We're all doing the very best we can. And we really need to honor who and how we are, and who and how others are, without slipping into judgment and contempt, to the best of our ability. So that's one thing.
Isn't there some kind of selfishness to the stigma behind suicide? Because I've had so many friends commit suicide various different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I never once thought, well, shame on them, or what a huge loss. Like, I felt like they had to do what they had to do. And I never actually, do you think that it's a little bit too serious with this idea? Because even ChatGPT won't anytime I can just type in suicide, it goes, if you need help, call this
Yeah.
number.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I would say too serious because it is serious. And it's, people, you don't want, when somebody actually is truly suicidal, they really are on this precipice and extremely in an extremely fragile state, an extremely fragile situation. And so, what might feel like a, tap to you, if you were standing on the edge of a cliff and somebody taps you gently on the shoulder, that's going to feel very different than if they're tapping you on the shoulder and you're standing in the middle of your kitchen. So,
Wow.
so so it is a serious issue. These are serious issues. And one of the things that I, tried to do in the book is to take on and explore serious issues, trauma and, abuse to some degree and, various forms of suffering, to do that through a lens of compassion and to weave a lot of humor into the book. And so one of the goals of the book is actually to, to give people an opportunity, hopefully, to laugh. Laughter really diffuses charges. Laughter is like incredible medicine,
Yeah.
and hopefully, I mean, in my opinion anyway, a great book, or at least a good book, is one that leaves the reader feeling a little better off than they were before they picked it up.
Sure.
And, whatever that means to them, have you had some insights about yourself? Have you had some insights about the world? Did you at least have a little bit of time where you could laugh and forget about some of the things in your life that were bothering you?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Or laugh about them head on. It's just bringing
Mhm.
up, death or something. And in my family, traditionally, we just use it as a suit of armor. Humor is there to get us through the hardest of things. And you find this typical among oppressed people or poor people and stuff. And did you get any pushback with people who thought that this dark humor is just a departure from the normal stuff you do? And I'm so shocked. Or
Not yet, but that doesn't mean it's not coming. Bring it on. No, not yet. I think people, readers, from what I've heard anyway, from the people, who follow us at Beyond Carnism and my work, it's not, I haven't had bad feedback, or negative feedback. Although people were surprised that I wrote this book, because when you look at the other books, I mean, the themes are quite similar to what I wrote,
I was
before.
surprised. I was really surprised to get this in the mail. I thought, okay.
And then you read it and you were like, oh, there's
This is
poop
amazing.
jokes in it.
And I thought, how can you be so funny? This isn't fair. How can you be all these things and then funny on top of that? You're horning in on my thing now. You can't be everything,
It's the humor
Melanie.
Olympics.
Where did your sense of humor come from? Obviously, you have it very well.
Well, I mean, it depends. I don't know that everybody that reads the book will, resonate with the humor. It's fairly dark and it's like, some toilet humor thrown in, and that's like not everybody's jam, but but if it is, then it is. My family, like, humor has always played a huge role in my family. It's just it's our coping mechanism to deal with each other. It's always played a huge role in my life. It's just that the work that I do in the public facing, sort of nature of my work, I can incorporate it if I'm doing something live, like if I'm giving a live talk or a workshop or something, I can bring in humor because it works. But for some of the other work, some of the videos we make or other books that I've written, it just hasn't really been appropriate. There hasn't been a place. So I have to, take it all out on my husband at home, amp it up and just be, extra wacky behind the scenes. Get it out of my system.
Yeah. But now you have an outlet. And was it hard for you to sit down? Obviously, you said you were able to sit down. Is that because you didn't have to comb through charts and graphs and statistics, that you could actually create these stories out of thin air?
Well, it was like I got to channel. I have a wild imagination, and I got to sort of like channel all of the, like stuff that probably shouldn't be floating around for too long in my mind, out onto the page. It was very good for me.
Yeah.
No, it did come quite naturally. I mean, there was like, I plotted and I was quite strategic and constructing an outline and everything. But then when I had the outline came to me very quickly, like just the basic premise and the narrative arc. And it's not to say that there weren't machinations. Like I had one set of, it was a couple that they were a therapy couple, I took them out because I didn't think that their story contributed, their narrative contributed, but there were no other major changes. And it was good that I did that because I inserted Mortal Wounds instead, the support group.
Yeah, right.
So
And that was another question I had. It was the most memorable scenes involve Emma's support group and the clients. And what brought this out? What was the decision to highlight their stories? And yeah, where'd that come from?
well, I mean, it's like my parents when I was younger. Where did that come from? Pointing at my head, like, where did that just came out of your head? Um, it was I mean, a couple of things. One is that I wanted to have, like, so Emma's story. Emma's the protagonist, this psychologist, and she's on, for people listening. So she's basically on this journey of discovery. She's trying to crack the code of her SOS, like to figure out what caused this problem, this SOS, before she kills herself. So she's on this journey of discovery, and through this journey of discovery, she's learning about herself, she's learning about SOS, she's learning about her family, and she's still going about her everyday life because Emma's a helper. She's a psychologist. She's there. Her whole life is about helping others, taking care of others, giving to others. So she's not stepping back when she probably should step back. And so I incorporated, some of their stories as well, the stories of people who attend her Mortal Wounds support group, weekly support group, and the stories of some of her clients who have their own narrative arcs, who are on their own journeys. And the challenge is that all of these narratives have to kind of fit together. Like they all have to make sense in the end, because it is a mystery and everything has to kind of like make sense in terms of like, why am I writing about like her supervisee? Emma has a supervisee, an intern she supervises, Little Miss Meme, she calls her. So why would I include a chapter about that? Well, this chapter has to ultimately be also about Emma and her journey of discovery. So I included them to support Emma's journey, but I also included them because, to me, as I said earlier, a good book or I'm not saying this is a great book, but to me, a great book is a book that you walk away from feeling like you're a little bit better off, and to be able to provide readers with information that might help them in their lives in some way. I wanted an opportunity for Emma to share psychological insights. I wanted, some dialogue about personal struggles that could provide some learnings for readers. And so a good way to do that was through bringing in her clients.
You're always squeezing in the catharsis to try to help the people. I like that, even in fiction. And I did, and I ran to check on all these things like objectophilia, and I thought, wow, this is wild. But you also have a character called Couch GPT, who is an AI therapist. I don't want to give too much away, but it's a kind of a fascinating character. I use this stuff a lot. I use AI a lot. I think it's interesting because I can find so many things out so quickly. Most are true. Most of the time it's true. How do you see technology and AI impacting mental health care?
If you had asked me this 6 months ago, I would have given you a different answer because that was before I started using ChatGPT to give me coaching. So it's incredible. I mean, and you're right, like AI hallucinates. And that's true, but there's a big difference between asking ChatGPT, in this case it's ChatGPT, CouchGPT is just the name I gave for it. It came from a friend of mine. He actually came up with the name for me. But he said, why are you calling it ChatGPT? Call it CouchGPT. That's more fun. Okay. So it's one thing if ChatGPT or AI is hallucinating when you're asking if like the medication you're about to take is going to interact with the medication, you took 2 hours before. A hallucination can make a big difference. But when it comes to like just talking about like processing something that you're struggling with interpersonally, if it hallucinates, if it's off, it's off. I mean, it still is probably better than most advice you would get from a person you sit next to in a bar who you're processing your problems with, or the bartender. Like, you're going to get better advice. And I've been pleasantly surprised. Like, I find it an incredibly, very, very insightful sort of sparring partner or dialogue partner for a variety of things. And one of them is really processing, some personal struggles, or personal questions that I have. And it's like,
Yeah.
no judgment, it's not triggered if you don't thank it enough.
It's not going to blackmail you later and say, I know what you did. And
Yeah, hopefully not. So
yeah.
yeah, it's pretty incredible. So I think, there's such a need, and I do wonder a lot, like, wow, if I could be for 5 minutes, if I could be Chat GPT, I can only imagine how much human suffering is getting funneled through keyboards,
Yeah.
into this machine, into this AI, it's not even a
I,
machine, into this
I read something
process.
this week. They said 3 out of 4 teens are now using ChatGPT or a AI chatbot in order to just get through their lives.
That's great, and it's not surprising, and I advise it a lot. People come to me all the time asking if I can refer them to a coach or a therapist, and it's so hard for me to find people who are like, who I know well enough to trust, who are competent, who I feel are really competent. Now I just say, talk to ChatGPT. It's better than nothing, and like
It
a
is.
lot better than nothing, and frankly, better than a lot of, at least just from my own personal experience, conversations that I've had with people who are like licensed mental health practitioners.
Yeah.
So it's incredible that it's out there and people need it. And I really think if we don't just blow this planet up and we make it to the future, like a relational future, we're just going to look back on this time and be like, how the hell did they get out of bed in the morning? Like, how did people leave their house in the time they lived in?
Yeah, that's always the question, right? When I look at the contemporary society and think there was a time in the past where I asked the same questions about them during slavery, like how did they look themselves in the mirror, or and humans are like that. They have the cognitive dissonance and the ability to brush off anything and everything that they've done, horrific war crimes, and just go to sleep at night. And humans are amazing like that.
Just go to sleep at night, except that like people are highly medicated in order to sleep these days. Like
That's
people
true.
aren't just going to sleep at night and they're not just getting up in the morning. And from the minute you wake up, you're just bombarded with like the insanity that is this world. And, you get in your car and you're like in a hunk of metal driving on a highway. Like, if you're here in Germany, that's a whole different, animal. But like, let's say in the US, you're driving 70 miles an hour next to other hunks of metal driving 70 miles an hour, texting, and you, like at any minute, things could go sideways.
Yeah.
There's road. I just don't like when I look at the state of humanity and like what we have to deal with. Like,
that's so funny. I don't leave the house. I'll be honest. I don't leave the house. I used to drive. I don't drive anymore because I don't trust human beings behind the wheel of large machinery like that anymore either. My wife always goes into traffic with her bike and thinks, oh, there's traffic laws. That'll keep me safe. I'm like, no, some old person is like barely conscious and is just, going to kill you and turn you into peanut butter and jelly on the side of the road if you're not careful. This is real. And that's not even the seniors that are the problem. It's everybody collectively not doing as good as they should. Like we have all these rules and all these cultural things that we take very seriously, but at the same time, no, I don't believe that in private people really are that great. Like one of the examples I always use is like people in the CIA. They used to believe that these people have an incredible amount of power over our lives and over the government and over foreign policy. And they believed at one time that Soviets had psychic abilities. And most of the people in the CIA are probably Christians who believe that there's an invisible man in the sky who decides all this. So people in high levels of government believe these fanatical fantasies and superstitious things. I'm scared. I'm not leaving the house. Is that okay, Dr. Joy?
You do you. Everybody's got to know their boundaries. But we can talk more about that after we're not on the air if you want.
Sure.
But it is true. But it is true. Like people are, we are very, we've inherited a mess of a world. Like we have been born into a profoundly dysfunctional world. And, and I talked about this with you before in the last podcast, in my work on relationships. And when I said, it never ceases to amaze me that most of us have to learn complicated geometry that we'll probably never need to use. And we don't get a single formal lesson in how to be healthy relational beings. and how to communicate effectively, right? And when you look at the problems of the world, they're not caused by people who don't know how to do geometry. We're just, most of us have like inherited, like we've inherited a lot of very, very dysfunctional and problematic ways of relating and of being in the world. And people get triggered and people are not terribly self-aware and people get reactive and there's all this baggage, and that's the reality of the state of humanity today, and it has been for a long time. And so I think we all have to have a lot of grace for ourselves and others, because everybody's a hot mess, and it's just a question of like, what kind of a mess are you? And but everybody's a hot mess in some ways, and you can't be born into a world like this and not get messed up in some ways.
Yeah. And for the people who live with their emotions on their sleeves and their arms are always open wide because they need connectivity and stuff, that the people who play their cards close to their chest understand more the reality of the situation, while people like me, who are always wanting to connect with people, in a constant state of disappointment because it's not what I thought it was supposed to be. So yeah, what do you think the parts of modernity that really warp our relationships?
I mean, I think to be fair, there are a lot of ways that we understand more about human psychology today than we ever have before. Like we understand attachment. We understand how it is how we form attachments with others. We understand, for example, that we're hardwired to seek out to feel securely attached to others, right? To feel like we have a good connection with others and we're safe in others' presences. We want meaningful connection. And we understand that. We also understand that a lot of people, because of their upbringing and sometimes their hardwiring, don't develop secure attachment, and they develop what's called insecure attachment. And that means that, it's scary to form closer connections with others, and this can get away in the way of some of our, we want closeness, but we fear closeness, so we pull it towards us and then we push it away, and and a lot of this is unconscious. So on one hand, we really know enough. We know a lot about human psychology. It's not a mystery, and for anybody who really is interested in and wants to improve their psychological well-being, there's tons of information out there. And I have I think we talked about this on the last podcast, but I wrote a book called Getting Relationships Right for this very reason. It was, again, I'm a very unhappy nonfiction writer, but I was working as a relationship coach, and and people kept coming up to me, and I was like, I want one book I can give to people that kind of distills everything that I think is most important in terms of how to create healthy connections with yourself and others. And I wrote this book, Getting Relationships Right. And then there's also things I don't know if you know who Sam Harris is.
Yeah.
Okay. So Sam Harris has an app called Waking Up. It's based on a book he wrote, and it's game changing. It's incredible, and I think you would actually really like it. Sam Harris became famous for being an atheist. Maybe that's how you know him.
Yeah.
I came to his work. I mean, I knew him as a famous atheist, did not follow his work until I discovered that he is also a famous meditator. And I've learned, at least in the earlier days of my meditation practice, I learned more from him and changed more because of his work than anybody else I had ever followed or tried to learn from. So he's created this app. And the reason I share this is, in terms of what concerns me most about humanity is that we have a lot of trauma, and trauma is intergenerational. When your parents are traumatized, you tend to inherit their trauma, and that doesn't mean that there's no hope for you or there's no hope for humanity. It just means that until we really come to an understanding of how we've been, to some degree, how we've been psychologically affected by what we've inherited and by the world around us, we're at a disadvantage. And so Sam Harris's app, Waking Up, it's a whole app designed to, as he puts it, create a new operating system for your mind. And he says that the only thing that we have that we can really offer others is the quality of our mind. And when the quality of your mind is healthy, everything around you gets a lot healthier. And when the quality of your mind is not, when your mind is not healthy, you will see it in every experience you have.
So what, in a nutshell, if one were to want to get started with meditation as a way to cope with the madness of the world, what would you say is a good first step I mean,
Yeah.
how does it
So
work? Or also, tell me a little bit about
So there's lots of different types of meditation, right? And meditation has a ton of like incredible benefits of like, just calming your nervous system and helping you to regulate, get your nervous system into balance and develop more self-awareness. It's amazing for all of these different things and more. It helps with sleep and stress levels. What Sam Harris talks about and his app, it's not just him. He's got a lot of the leading experts in the world who are talking about a very particular type of meditation that serves a very particular purpose, which is beyond just feeling better. I don't want to say just, I don't want to minimize it, because reducing stress levels really matters, right? Building self-awareness really matters. But Sam Harris's app, and this is why I recommend it, it's like an easy sort of first step. The app walks people through this process and this understanding, and they have a sliding scale for people as well who can't afford the app. So it's accessible to everybody. The approach is quite different. The approach is not simply to learn how to calm yourself down or to practice, traditional mindfulness, which most people think of as like sitting down, closing your eyes, focusing on your breathing. The purpose of this app is to help you fundamentally shift, transform the way that you perceive and understand the nature of reality, the nature of your life, what really matters in the world. And I can't explain it much more than that. They do a much better job of it, but it is working to shift the way that you actually think. And it's very useful. So that's what I'll say.
Yeah, because I need something to cut in right before that nagging, annoying, negative voice in my head starts telling me, what's the point? I need something to get in there and say, no, just let's think differently. Let's try a different train of thought.
Yeah, and I think you'll find that useful, and I think one thing that they would say is that it's not a question of cutting into that voice. It's a question of just recognizing that voice is nothing other than a voice. It's like nothing other than a thought. And a thought is totally insubstantial. A thought is only as powerful as it becomes because you imbue it with meaning and believe it. But it really is nothing other than an internal voice. If you dilute it, like if you, what's the word I'm looking for? If you deconstruct it, that's it.
Yeah. If you give it credence, then it becomes real. If it's like if you believe in your nightmares, then there is a monster under your bed. Yeah, and I believe in that the power to do this. And I interviewed a guy from Johns Hopkins. He was this great guy. He mapped out the brain of the fruit fly using AI. He's a really brilliant young guy. Young guy, he's like older than me. But he said that taking psychedelics was one of the most promising things in the realm of curing trauma, and I immediately latch onto that because it helped me extraordinarily get over a lot of stuff. What do you think about that?
I mean, I'll just share what I know about it. I don't, have a strong opinion about it. I know that it has been shown to do tremendous good and really help people if they're taken in the right way, in the right setting, under the right supervision, generally, kind of supervision. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a doctor, but the right supervision. And they're not they're not for everybody. So you really do have to have a certain temperament and to be able to take psychedelics, because it does come with a risk. Like you don't know that you're going to have a good trip,
right?
Necessarily, but they can be really life-changing. I mean, I know people, who have had their lives really, really changed just from one experience with psychedelics.
Sometimes when you take a little bit, sometimes the skeletons just come pouring out of the closet, and then you find yourself in a bad way for a few hours. But yeah, mostly I learned to appreciate nature, appreciate animals. That was my introduction to veganism. Essentially, was sitting on the floor, high on acid, looking right into the eyes of a dog and just seeing that this dog was everything that I was. That this dog was alive and felt pain and felt all the range of emotions and was and compared to human beings, incredibly loyal, and so I would advocate. I'm not a doctor, but I think whatever helps. So what did you writing this book? Obviously, you've had a lot of the stuff in here is probably true. I mean, this is also based in the East Coast of the USA, which that's your old stomping ground, I guess. Was there any other challenges or surprises that you encountered writing this book?
No, I mean, I was surprised that I enjoyed the process as much as I did. And yeah.
But so more to come. There'll be more fiction to come.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. That's the $1,000,000 question. I would like to think so. I would like to do it. And I have, I have work on my plate that I'm doing like right now. As I said,
Yeah.
maybe we weren't on the air when I said it before.
No. Can you say it? Are you allowed to
Oh,
talk about it?
hope so. We'll see. We'll find out. We're working right now on, so we're doing preliminary work, but we are filming. We are in the process of filming, putting together a documentary film, which is the film version of my best-selling book, Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows. So that's consuming my sort of creative bandwidth at the moment. But after that, if it also depends on how well this book circulates. So writing a book is one thing, but getting a book to breaking through the clutter is a whole different animal. And that's also, it has to really, I wrote it because I did want it to go out into the world, and I wanted it to reach people, and I wanted it to, be read so that it could do some, good in the world. So I'll wait and see how well that ends up circulating.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm maybe 3/4 the way through. I didn't get through the whole thing, and which is good because I do that on purpose so I don't spoil anything for anybody else. But I really, really enjoyed this. Out of all the fiction that I've read, and I've had lots of fiction writers on and stuff, the way that you wrote it, the prose, everything, incredibly funny, incredibly insightful, and I like things that are, you know, funny, but also interweaved with a lot of true scientific ideas and stuff. And this is exactly what this is. I really enjoyed this.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I really appreciate you coming in. And the other thing is, you wrote a music album. Why are we not talking about this?
That was a hobby. That's nothing. You're a real musician. You would not be very impressed, but
Yes,
yeah.
I'm a real musician, whatever that means. I don't have my certification behind me, but yeah.
Yeah, but you've got your banjo behind you
Yeah, I can
and your
make noise with
violins.
it.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
I
Very
could do
cool.
that. Well, I guess we'll talk about your music after we get done here because I want to hear about that. And I want you to send me a link to it. Um, Melanie Joy, Dr. Melanie Joy, one of the most wonderful human beings I know. Check out her book, Half-Hearted Death Wish. I think it's out now. Is that right?
It's out now. Yep.
Okay. Is there anything you want to tell the people out there in TV land?
People in TV land. Yeah, thanks. Well, I mean, if they're tuning in, it's because, they're open-minded and curious, and they want to learn something that's going to make a difference in some way. And so I'm always inspired by that, and grateful. I'm grateful to be a part of it and know people are out there who want to have these conversations and listen to these conversations. And if you like the book, please rate it on Amazon, because ratings help us. I was talking about breaking through the clutter. It definitely makes a difference if, people rate it, and it bumps it up in the queues.
The algorithm, people. Stroke the algorithm. And if you're not open-minded, well, then you probably lost. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next time. And until next time, be good to yourself. Bye-bye.